does blockchain eliminate the need for intermediaries?
It does not eliminate the need for intermediaries for a few reasons I think we'll get into here. It certainly does compress the broad need for intermediaries. So in the traditional, in the current financial system, there are many layers of participants these layers formed and emerged based on the need for scale and efficient transactions, that because of the efficiency of blockchain transactions and the scale of blockchain transactions, you'll see those layers compress. But in the end, the securities industry is a trust industry. A trustless network isn't able to solve all trust problems. And to the point that Tom raised, for example, let's take that piece of real estate. And there's a piece of real estate that we take the title and we put it on chain. Someone is attesting to the status of that real estate if you're engaging in a transaction, unless you want every party to have to go and put eyes on the piece of property in order to decide whether they want to own a piece of it and transact in a piece of it. Someone's making a claim. How do you know that person is being truthful? There are certain standards for that, et cetera, et cetera. So you see this across financial markets. Parties are held to regulatory standards which govern a fair and efficient market. How do you know that the right parties are offering the right assets on chain? Someone has to verify that they are properly governed, et cetera. So in the end, you see what happens on blockchain networks when you don't have that sort of governance. And there are, unfortunately, many ups and downs in the blockchain market as unregulated assets have risen and fallen on blockchain networks. You don't want a buyer beware market economy. You don't want everyone to be a smart contract auditor in order to hold an asset. What you want is trust entities who actually have a role, but are more importantly accountable for their responsibility in the market to make sure that mom and pop can properly handle the assets and can be assured that the assets that they think they own are actually owned.
Yeah, during the first part of this whole conversation, it's just kind of dawned on me that in reality, DTCC's role isn't really changing so much from a governance perspective. Is that right, Tom? Governance is a real characteristic of what we provide today. It's what we're going to provide in blockchain as well. Is that right?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that maybe the difference in the distinction between what we do today and how we create this governance is that DTCC is a member-based organization, is a participant-based organization, and we provide these rules and governance within the ecosystem that we've created. And I think that what blockchain has enabled the world to do is move assets more freely, more broadly, without beyond jurisdiction, and we're able to do that in an open way. So we're able to create the governance and standards for the broader market that's open to the broader population and not just to the participants of our members. And even though that does sort of cascade down to, if you have an account with a broker, you're by default, abiding by the rules of DTCC and the governance of DTCC. But now this is becoming more open and transparent. We can say, here's what here's what our smart contract looks like. Here's what the governance standards are, and this is the way the market will move. And I think that the other important thing, and back to some of the other points that we've been making through the course of the conversation, is that the reality is that there are literally trillions and trillions worth of assets that exist in traditional form. And I think that what we've seen in the blockchain market, in the digital asset market thus far, is that while there's been great projects and great work that's been done to prove that tokenization works and to demonstrate why blockchain works, ultimately securities and assets are being tokenized one by one. By providing this governance and standards and opening up the vault, if you will, to open these assets up, you're taking the entire market and creating the ability to move it as opposed to doing it one by one. And I think that's the other difference that we provide. It's like, here's the standards and plus the assets. we'll change the world that way.
And not only that, but the technology, right? The ability to perform these functions and to innovate and to bring some of this technology to bear and unlock the capabilities and benefits, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's been so much work that's been done in the space, but in a way that hasn't been able to scale. And I think that doing what we're doing doing it the approach that we've taken is, and I even think about when you talk about the digital twin versus native issuance, what we're offering is the have your cake and eat it too moment, I think, in that you have the access to the asset, you have the entitlement to the asset, you don't have to worry about the level of blockchain risk because we're providing a level of because the standards and the recourse that we offer, as Dan described. So I think that's really the moment that we're at.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I discovered as we came into the DTCC fold, is that there's a heavy governance framework. Every technical decision has to have an accountable party, that has a business purpose. There's decisions that are made where if something goes wrong, a regulator can come in and see exactly why was that decision made. That's a very important part of a highly governed, systemically important infrastructure. It's a burden, to be sure, when you want to innovate very quickly, but it's how you ensure that the markets are never down for the 50 years of DTCC's existence. It's an important part of governance. So if you were to ask the question, should we use chain A or chain B? Someone has to make that decision on, hey, chain B has the following characteristics that probably aren't good for the handling of this security or not. How do you want that decision to be made? Is there an accountable party if you made the wrong decision? Within a chain, if you're going to do a technical upgrade, and we're going to talk a little bit later about MEV as a topic, but these things, are there proper investor protections associated with this decision? Someone needs to be accountable for those components. Now, there are blockchain, you could say, well, what about blockchain? Can't that do it? Well, remember, blockchain networks have their own governing bodies. And the technical decisions associated with those blockchain networks are governed by those bodies, but not necessarily with a systemically important market infrastructure perspective.
Right.
Now, those parties might choose to become DTCC-like in their governance framework. I don't think they know what they're asking for, if that's what they would want to be. But in the end, what you see is this is a necessary part of having secure, reliable, always-on national networks. And so that's a component that doesn't go away. In fact, in many ways, it's strengthened by these developments in the blockchain world.